I hope you all have had as much fun as I had eating turkey and dressing today. But now it's time to talk comics, and there is a new number one book in my top five. It's time for another episode of the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. Hit the music.
It's time for the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. The podcast you look forward to for all of your news and reviews of the best comic books hitting stands. Whether it's DC,
Batman, Wonder Woman,
Marvel,
Spider-Man,
Image,
Spawn, Saga,
Boom,
Once and Future, Power Rangers,
or whatever book or publisher you follow,
we cover them all here.
this is the place for you.
That's right, it's for everyone.
This is the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast.
Let's get it.
Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. I am your host, Theo. Back again, recording on Thanksgiving evening. I am full and I am pooped, but I am here as I said I would, talking about my top five books for this week that came out this past Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. This list will have some familiar titles, but we have a brand new title that is at the top of my list for my favorite books of the week. And it's not something that you might expect. But let's go ahead and just jump right into it. My number five book. So my number five book of this week, Justice League Unlimited number one, written by Mark Waid, with art from Dan Mora, colors by Tamara Bonvillain. First of all, let me get to the great stuff first. You will never, ever, ever see me talk about anything bad when it comes to art from Dan Mora. He is the artist that you can put on anything, and I am almost guaranteed to pick it up. And that is no different here with Justice League Unlimited. And his teamwork, he's been doing art with Tamara Bonvillain for as long as I can remember. And my favorite work by that duo has always been Once and Future. So, they're back together again doing this work with regards to Justice League Unlimited, which is, I'm assuming it's going to be the main book coming out of this new all-in initiative that DC is doing since the end of Absolute Power. And, at the end of Absolute Power, we see that the Justice League has grown, and it has basically grown to be anyone that wants to be in the league, that has superpowers and wants to do good by the world and by the universe, can join the Justice League, and they have a place for them in the Watchtower. The story from Mark Waid started a little slow for me. Of course, we see a lot of stuff that kind of happened in some of these other stories that have come out already. Whether we're talking about The Question, whether we're talking about Superman or Batman, of everything that's come out of Absolute Power going into All In has kind of been the same when it comes to the league and being on the Watchtower. And it's basically being introduced to heroes, new folks being introduced to heroes and being shown around. And it's been kind of repetitive. In this first issue of Justice League Unlimited, that new hero being shown around is Airwave. And Flash is being the tour guide, if you want to call him that, showing him around the Watchtower. It's his first time there. And what we see is that it immediately jumps into action as the League is called to Africa to help out this town that's being attacked for their natural resource, which is iridium. And we see some things with regards to the Watchtower as we're introduced again to some of the characters within the this all in initiative, whether it's Black Lightning or whether it's Star Sapphire, whether it's Soups, and we see Red Tornado being introduced as well. And we see that Red Tornado has not gotten his body back yet, so he's kind of being used as AI for the league and using his abilities to basically manage and dispatch the team to needed locations based on their abilities and their abilities being able to uh, quickly dispatch of the issues that's going on. And so he leads a team, he sends a team off to this African nation to help the villagers with this attack that's going on there. And when we get there, we see that the villagers are kind of trying to fight themselves and trying to protect themselves and their constituents, and they're not doing a great job. These attackers have some really powerful weapons and tanks and machinery that they're using, but we see by the time the story ends, and I don't want to spoil it too much, but we see something similar at the end of this story that we've kind of been seeing in the other all in titles, whether it's again the question or anything that regards the Watchtower, in that there is there is an attack from the league, and the attack from the league is coming from within, and we kind of see this in the question story as well, where the story is, you know, Renee Montoya, the question, has been basically made the sheriff of the Watchtower and in charge of security and law enforcement there. But what the league really wants her to do is to uh, find out who's trying to attack and basically reconfigure the Watchtower to be some type of weapon for nefarious ways. And now we see at the end of this issue in Justice League Unlimited #1, we see that Airwave is set out to kill the members of the league. Now, I don't think, considering the way the question issue ended, I don't think these two are exclusive of one another. They have their own missions. You know, whoever is behind this thing with the Watchtower seems to be a little bit different than what we see with Airwave, who simply says he's there to kill the Leaguers, whereas we see in the question the nefarious goal is to use the Watchtower as a weapon itself. So we kind of see this theme, and it's not a new theme. We've seen it before, where the League is under attack, you know, as soon as they get together again. And the only caveat this time around is that this attack is coming from within. So I will continue reading it. One of the things that, and if you missed my interview with Adam Rose, check it out. But one of the things that he mentioned when in Rapid Fire, and I asked him to choose between Justice League Unlimited and Batman the Animated Series, he chose Justice League Unlimited simply because it was the opportunity to see all of his favorite heroes in one place. And with this series, we get to see that as well. We get to see all of the heroes of the DC universe in one place on the Watchtower, and I'm on board for that. I am hopeful and giving Mark Waid the benefit of the doubt that as these things pick up, as we see now Airwaves' mission to destroy the Leaguers and to kill the Leaguers, that business will really pick up. And I have trust in Waid in making sure that this story hits its mark. And, you know, again, I'm not going to talk about Dan Moore any more than I've already had. His art is just superior in every way. And the cover, so I ended up getting the Dan Moore cover, but you really cannot go wrong with any of the covers that they have out there, whether it's the incentive covers or just the regular opener order covers that DC has. But truly enjoyed it. That's my #5 book for the week, Justice League Unlimited #1, written by Mark Waid with art from Dan Mora over at DC Comics. Okay, my number 4 book, Star Trek Defiant number 21, written by Christopher Cantwell with art by Angel Nzueto. I've been saying it from day one, and I continue to say it till this day. Star Trek Defiant is the most Star Trek comic on shelves right now. Forget the main Star Trek series. Forget Lower Decks, although Lower Decks is fun. The first issue's out already. Star Trek Defiant is just so well done in the world of Star Trek. It truly gives you the feel that you are watching an episode of Star Trek Defiant on TV. You know, I remember saying that a few times when speaking about Gatchaman and how it feels like I'm watching a Saturday morning cartoon when I read that, and I say the exact same thing about Defiant. You read it, and you feel like you're watching an episode of the series on TV. And it was no more the case with this issue. As I got to the end of this particular issue, I almost felt like the series was coming to an end. It felt like a finale, even though it was just the end of this particular story arc, which is the Stars of Home. And we see in here that this really focuses on what happens on the Romulan ship with General Rabo, who has basically caused this coup, who started this coup, and Selah and Spock, who are his prisoners. And we know that he started this coup because basically, if you can remember, and I hate saying this, but if you can remember the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie, the very first one, we know that Romulus gets destroyed by a supernova. Well, we get a tie-in to that by Revo basically admitting that this coup was started was because they found out about this pending supernova, and the Romulan leadership, the Praetor, and the Tal Shiar general, knew about it and wouldn't act. And so he decided to act by attacking this planet and Terra. And so Selah basically kills her dad. And you can kind of call it a wash because we learned that Revo killed her mom, Tasha Yar. And it's been wonderful how Christopher Cantwell and, to her credit, the group editor, Heather Antos, has been able to just tie this world that IDW is doing with this series, with Star Trek and the Star Trek universe as a whole, and just do such a good job of tying it to the cinematic universe, whether it's the TV series or any of the movies. Again, and I say that as someone who is not the biggest fan of the J.J. Abrams universe. I basically hate it. But with regards to tying these worlds together, they just have been doing a wonderful job, especially with Defiant. And it's just been a great read from start to finish. Now, I do have concerns going into issue number 22, and it has nothing to do with the storytelling, but more with the focus of the story. So I may have mentioned a few times how I am not a fan of the Cisco and his sons. I've never been a fan of Jake and Ben Cisco. I also have never been a fan of Alexander. Worf's son. But we see that with this new arc that is going to be starting next month, that there's going to be a focus on those two, and retying their relationship as father and son. I am hopeful that they'll do a good job in keeping my interest. Um, but I just have, again, my own personal concerns with regards to my own distaste of Alexander. But we'll see how that goes. Uh, but again, this was a great arc when you look at just the relationship with everyone, and in the end, as Worf goes off to handle this relationship that he's trying to rebuild with Alexander, we see that he gives command of the Defiant to Torres. No, not Torres. He gives it to Bilana, and we see that she takes it with pride. But I am again hopeful, considering that dislike of Alexander, that the series will continue to be a great one. I am looking forward to it. But again, it continues to be good enough that it is my number 4 book for this week. And again, that is Star Trek Defiant number 21, written by Christopher Cantwell with art by Angel Unzueto over at IDW. Okay, in the number 3 spot, and you may be shocked when I say this, but my number 3 book of the week, Void Rivals number 14, written by Robert Kirkman with art from Lorenzo De Felici over at Skybound Image. This is now another week that Void Rivals has been in the countdown, but has not been my number 1 book. And that is not to say that it's not good. It's great, but it's just that my top 2 just has a little bit something more than Void Rivals did this week. So we know at this point that the folks from the G.I. Joe world have made their way to Void Rivals now, with the natives of Cobra La looking for the source of the Energon that they've been tracking. And so that's happening, but this is really focusing on 2 things. One, Celia is still doing her search for Zerta with Android. But back on Agoria, they get word that there's a ship coming at them at a pretty consistent speed, and they're not sure what they're going to do about it. But Derek, being the best pilot of the Agorians, convinces his dad to let him go out and intercept this ship. And the ship ends up being Hot Rod, who is on the lookout for his friend Jetfire. And we see that he and Derek have some back and forth with regards to fighting each other in their respective ships before Derek becomes the bigger man, pun intended, and lowers his weapon. And at that point, he realizes that Hot Rod is Cybertronian as well, and so that kind of leads towards the end. But what happens throughout the middle part of the issue is we see that the connection between Celia and Derek is still there. So for some reason, due to the physics, whenever a ship leaves Agoria and has to make its way past the Great Ring, the Sacred Ring, the pilot basically has to put himself to sleep, and the AI, the android, Derek gets a new one, and the android basically pilots the ship till they're able to revive the pilot to take control. Well, while this is going on, uh, Derek is able to connect with Celia, who is again looking for Zerta, and they have a communication with each other in this astral form. That's what I'll call it. And they talk and converse, and you know, Derek reveals to her that uh, his dad and the people in control of Agoria knows about the unity as well, uh, just like Celia's leader, Premier Zeliak, knows on Zerta. So what's important there for me is not that he reveals that secret, which really shouldn't be that much of a secret, but it's the fact that these two have a connection with one another that's beyond their physical presence. They're able to connect each to one another. Neither of them know how this happens, but it happens. I'm going to assume that it is happening because of the way their Energon posts touched each other, or the Energon ports touched each other back before they went their separate ways. And I want to say that was in issue 12 before Thalia went on her mission to find Zerta. And that created that astral connection between the two. But the issue ends with the Quintessence, who has quite an issue with the Agorians and the Zertonians. They have made their way to the Great Ring, and they are now set to get their revenge. And so that's how the issue ends. So it's a great story, but I will tell you, for the first time, as much as I love Robert Kirkman's writing with Void Rivals, the art from Lorenzo De Felici outdoes the writing 2 to 1, in my opinion. I will call it the evolution of his art, and I've been saying this for a while when it comes to Lorenzo's art in Void Rivals. It just seems to get better as the story moves on, and you look at how he is drawing these characters now compared to how he drew them when the series first started. And it's just, there's a stark difference, and it is all for the better. It is beautiful with the colors and everything that's laid on top of De Felici's art. And I don't know if that's by design or if that's just great improvement in how he is envisioning the characters of this universe. But the art looks different, to say it's the same artist, but it looks so much better. And I was more in love with the art in this issue than I was in the writing. And again, that's not to take anything away from Robert Kirkman, but the art from Lorenzo De Felici was just phenomenal. It is just so beautiful, and I can't say enough about it. But again, as good as it was only able to make its way to the number 3 spot for this week. And again, that is Void Rivals number 14, written by Robert Kirkman with art from Lorenzo De Felici over at Skybound Image. Okay, let's go into my number 2 book for the week. Gatchaman number 5, written by Cullen Bunn with art by Chris Batista over at Mad Cave Studios. This has been one of my favorite books ever since it's been out. Again, I've been saying that ever since I interviewed Cullen Bunn a few months ago. This has just been a great series. Absolutely loved it. So it picks up, and if you can remember, it picks up where June went undercover. went to look for the scientist. Uh, the her cover's blown, more or less, and Galactor sends Mecha to destroy the city to distract the rest of the Science Ninja team from coming to rescue June. And so we see in issue number 4 that Dr. Nambu sends the Beta team out to help June, and they're able to save the scientists and make their way away from Galactor's base. That is basically was going to self-destruct anyway. Uh, but we see in this issue, we understand and we know that uh, Galactor has attacked the city for the purpose of distracting the Science Ninja team. Well, now that Berkatse know that June has made her escape, he calls off the mecha. He calls off that particular mission. But the commander, he ignores him and he goes to continue to destroy the Science Ninja team. Well, Berkase doesn't like being disobeyed, so he goes to self destruct that mecha, which at this time has the God Phoenix ship in its grasp. So it may just go and take them both out anyway. But we see that June has talked the Beta team into bringing her to the scene of this attack. She has to help out her teammates, despite the orders of Dr. Nambu that they all return back to base. So the Beta team doesn't do that. They drop her off. She goes, she helps out her team. They all find their way onto this mecha and they bring it out over water and causes it to self-destruct before making their way back to the God Phoenix and making it back to base, where they are pretty much scolded by Dr. Nambu for disobeying his orders. And so I'm just going to say this right now. Until I'm convinced otherwise, I have total distrust in Dr. Nambu. I don't know if Cullen Bunn has some type of swerve uh, coming up, but he just, the way that Nambu is currently being written and the portrayal that I'm picking up of this character is that he may not be as good as we think he is. He could easily be he could easily be a double agent. And what kind of helps me wonder that is as the issue ends, we see that Bird Katse is watching video of the Science Ninja team in action. Now, we don't know if this is a video that was taken on the mecha or not, but it's there. And but I just right now I just have this distrust of Dr. Nambu, and it goes all the way back to when I want to say in issue 2 or issue 3, where the Beta team was looking to help the Science Ninja team in completing missions in which they may have been in distress, and he has always held them back for one reason or another, and I have no idea why. But Mara as the leader of the Beta team, uh, always seems to be thrown under the bus by Nambu when they attempt to do more, and he treats them as a Beta team. But we will see how that all plays out. Again, until Cullen Bunn shows me otherwise, I am not holding Dr. Nambu in good regards right now. But we will see. Maybe I'll get Cullen Bunn back and he can admit to me one way or the other that there is more to the story as to why Dr. Nambu is acting the way that he is right now. But a little bit about the art. Again, I have loved the art from Chris Batista from day one. It- As I was mentioning about Defiant earlier, when I read Gatchaman, I really, I really get the feel that I'm watching a Saturday morning cartoon. And as someone who grew up in the 80s and as someone who was able to watch the original Battle of the Planets on TV as a kid, to have that Saturday morning feel while reading this comic book brings back a lot of nostalgia, which I absolutely enjoy when reading such a story. It is absolutely beautiful, and the colors on top just make it so much better. Now I'm gonna say this, and this is no swipe at Chris Batista, but I would love to get one issue, just one, where the art is done by Inaki Miranda, who's the cover artist for the series. When I look at his covers, and thus far every issue of Gotcha Man that I have bought has been the main cover, his covers, because the way he draws it has almost a realistic look. I sometimes I sometimes get Alex Ross vibes when I look at his covers, and I would love to see that in a completely drawn issue. Again, just one, and just to get it out of my system, and then you know let Chris Batista come back. But everything about this series right now, I have absolutely loved, and as you can see, I have loved it enough to have it over Void Rivals. Now, what has it over Void Rivals this time around is just the fact that there's just a little bit more action, which I gave some extra credit to. And, as it was just action from beginning to end when, the ship with the beta team in June making it to the battle and all the fighting with the Science Ninja team and the Galactor soldiers, just nonstop bang, 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 pow, pow, pow from start to finish until that mecha blows up. And, we just get those final pages where they're being chastised by Dr. Nambu, who I don't like right now. But it was just nonstop action, and it was just that was the thing that put it over Void Rivals for this week. But again, I've loved the series from the first issue. I am so happy that Mad Cave is in partnership with the creators and the owners of Gotcha Man and putting this series together. Now, from what I remember when I visited over at New York Comic Con this past October, that partnership is going to be growing. I think there's another Gotcha Man series that they're going to be doing sometime in 2025 because they had a poster that was there that I can't remember if I still have it, but I am looking forward to that one as well, as it's going to focus on the more modern Infinity team. But again, that is my number two book of the week, Gotcha Man number 5, written by Cullen Bunn, with art from Chris Batista, over at Mad Cave Studios. So we reached it, the number one spot, my number one book for the week. And if it's not if it's not Gotcha Man and it's not Void Rivals, what oh what was so good that it would knock those two out of the number one spot? That book is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 4, written by Jason Aaron with art from Chris Burnham over at IDW. This issue, this this particular issue really got me in the feels. So as we've seen so far with these first 4 issues, the turtles have kind of gone their separate ways, and we see that the clan is coming after them, and the clan coming after them is kind of bringing them back together. And with each issue, it focuses on a particular turtle, and each turtle is living a different life in each issue. But again, it brings them back together physically only. There are some problems with the brothers, that they still have to work out. So they're not there yet. But issue number four, issue number four focuses on Donatello. And man, Donatello is not in a good place at all. When you see him in the issue, he is broken more than any of his brothers. You know, he's broken physically. I mean, he looks almost emaciated with how thin his arms and his legs are. You could see in the dialogue with himself that he he has an artificial shell on his back. He is physically broken, but he is also mentally broken, and it really gets to him. He has not gotten over the loss of Splinter, so much so that he takes up this rat that he finds, and he really thinks that it's Splinter. And it's just the way that Aaron presents this character with his words and the writing, and the way that Chris Burnham presents Donatello visually, it just really gets you. And man, despite being broken, both physically and mentally, Donatello still remembers who he is as a hero and goes out of his way to protect some mutants that he has been imprisoned with, who are in this circus that is now shut down so that basically these mutants can be forced to fight for their lives against hunters who are coming for sport. And they come in, and paying cash to go one on one with one of these mutants. And if they win, they get the prize, and if they don't, they lose the money and they can come back another day. And being the hero, Donatello knows that these other mutants don't have a chance, that he has to fight for them. And he is doing so much more. He is swiping food and giving it to them so that they can eat, which leads to him looking as emaciated as he is. He's just giving his all to protect these other mutants. And they're concerned about him. They appreciate what he's doing for them, but they're worried that he's not going to last long because he is basically fighting for them. Whenever a new hunter shows up and drops his money to get a chance to kill a mutant, Donatello fixes it so that a hunter will always pick him for this fight. And it works every time. And as he fights these guys that come in to take out a mutant, he learns more and more about the area that he's in. He learns about the guards, and he tries to learn the codes, and he tries to learn everything he can so that he can make his move so that they can all make their escape. Well, with the last fight, it's not as simple because he's not just fighting one hunter, he's fighting them all. Everyone that he's defeated has come back, and they've all dropped money to get their shot at taking out the mutant that has beaten them. And he has some trouble. The only thing that saves him is the only thing that saves him is the Foot Clan, who has come to get Donatello themselves, and again, the hero within him goes out, not only takes out the Foot Clan, but does it in a way that not only protects the mutants, but also protects the hunters that were coming to kill him. And it's just absolutely awesome that Jason Aaron writes this issue and never loses sight that this character is a hero. He's going to, despite being broken, he's going to fight to the end. And by the time that Raphael, Michelangelo, and Leonardo makes it there and they find Donnie, he's taking them all out. But he's still not well. He's still talking about Splinter and the rat that he thinks is the reincarnated Splinter, despite the fact that the rat is dead now on his shoulder. But he goes out a hero, and it's just such a touching story in looking at how Donatello went through all of this and continues to go through all of this, but yet never forgets the fact that he is a hero. And the story ends back in New York, where we find out that the district attorney is now in cahoots with the Foot Clan, with the mission of bringing the turtles to his own version of justice. And we will see how that plays out. Now, again, I mentioned how Chris Burnham just really, really made the field build up with Donatello and how he drew him in this issue. And it is maddening in such a good way that he was able to really bring out emotion with you in putting his visual pieces together. So much so that if there were no words, you could still probably follow along with understanding and realizing where Donnie is, both physically and mentally. And it will be interesting to see once we get to issue 5 and beyond with how the brothers, with how they react to that and how they handle it, because we see that they are in a more better place, although they as a team are not. So they not only have to deal with their issues as a team, they're gonna have to deal with some issues with Donatello. He took all that has happened with the Turtles over these past few years that leads up to this new series, this new volume of the series that Jason Aaron is doing. And man, he's not in a good place, and it's gonna be interesting to see how Jason Aaron addresses it. And I am on board to see where it goes. And so, yeah, that's my book of the week. Yes, there was action in it, and there was some bang bang and fighting, and the good guys won. But man, the way that story was presented, Jason Aaron really had me in the feels as I went from page to page, and I applaud him for that. It takes a lot to take two books that I have praised since their first issue and taken them both out of the top spot, but Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #4 did it, and just great work from both Jason Aaron and Chris Burnham in putting this issue together. Kudos to you guys. You did it. So, again, that is my number one book of the week, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #4, written by Jason Aaron with art from Chris Burnham over at IDW Publishing. So there we have it. My top 5 books for New Comic Book Day, Wednesday, November 27th, 2024. Let's talk a little bit about the honorable mentions. Those books that I read that I enjoyed, but they just weren't as good enough to make its way into the top 5. First up, over at Marvel, we have West Coast Avengers #1, written by Jerry Dugan with art from Danny Kim. So we have Iron Man putting another team together on the West Coast. However, a little bit different with this team that he's putting together with Rhodey. And this team is going to consist of some bad guys, including Ultron. So we will see how that all plays out. Then we're going to go over to DC with Absolute Wonder Woman #2, written by Kelly Thompson with art from Hayden Sherman. So there is some action in the beginning and some action in the end, but this story mainly looks at Steve Trevor of this world and how he and Diana met, and just a little bit about those two. So there's from how I read it, there's not much of a romance between those two yet, but we will see. I mean, in every universe, Diana has her Steve Trevor, so we shall see. Moving on over to Mad Cave Studios, we have Gatchaman Galactor #4, the final issue of this miniseries, written by Steve Orlando with art from Pascal Quilano. So Berkatse is taking out the Lupo crime family who has been trying to take him out. And so we see him basically getting to the end of the family line and how that all plays out. Going on over to DC Comics, Superman #20, written by Joshua Williamson with art from Dan Mora. We have another Dan Mora book on art. If there's one thing that I don't want to say concerns me, but it kind of irks me, is that we still don't know the complete story as to how Lois has received her Kryptonian powers. Of course, we know that it has something to do with Supercore and something happening there. But the most interesting thing about this issue is we have Doomsday back, and we see that Doomsday is going to always come back, and that every time he dies, he's reborn, and he kind of evolves. Well, Superman gets introduced to a future Doomsday who is more evolved and is more godlike, and he can talk. So we will see how that series plays on. Like I said, I hope at some point Joshua Williamson gets the story to us as to how Lois got her powers, and I'm sure there's something about that kind of goes back to absolute power. And then finally, we go over. I'm sorry. Well, we stay over at DC Comics, but we go on over to Black Canary, Best of the Best, #1, written by Tom King with art from Ryan Sook. God dog it, Theo is reading another Tom King book. Something must be wrong with me, but it's a good start with Best of the Best #1. We see that Dinah is in this fight against Lady Shiva, and knowing Tom King, we know things aren't gonna always play out as we would expect. Knowing everything I know of Lady Shiva, I don't know I don't know of any way Dinah Lance can beat Lady Shiva in canon universe. Now we can go to any of the other multiverse worlds and we may find a Dinah Lance that can take Shiva out. But I of this main world, of this prime Earth, I don't know of any way that Black Canary can physically best Lady Shiva in any way, considering her lineage and her training and who she trained. But we also see that there is some villainy around it, with Vandal Savage basically trying to pay Dinah to take the fall. And to take the fall in a particular round. I'm assuming there's a lot of money on the table, and there is, considering that the fight is taking place in Las Vegas, in a stadium that can somehow hold 200,000 people, but is being watched all over the universe, considering the heroes of the DC universe. So we shall see how that all plays out. Something tells me that by the end, this whole Dinah take a fall is not going to happen. We're going to see some type of way Tom King is going to write it so that Dinah wins. Although, like I said, I just can't see any world in the Prime Universe where Black Canary can beat Lady Shiva, especially considering that they're not allowed to use weapons or superpowers, which is the key to Black Canary's ability of being a hero. Is not her fighting ability, which is top notch, but it is her canary cry that makes her the hero, and the fact that she can't use it is really to her detriment. But we shall see. So those are my honorable mentions for this week. This week was really heavy DC, so we had a good bit. I enjoyed this week. Had a good time, and had the holiday to really catch up and read a whole lot. Can't wait for next week. That is going to do it for this episode of the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. I'd like to thank you all for your continued support of the program. The Comic Bin Podcast, as well as the Comic Book Spot, are a part of the Comic Book Source family of sites and media. You can follow the podcast on Twitter X at comic_bin, or my personal account at BatmanFan_4life. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. We're all over social media. You can also follow our sister site over at thebatmanuniverse.net for all of your news and reviews in the world of Batman. Tune in next time as we give you more in the world of comic books. Again, we truly appreciate your support. But until we meet again next time, keep reading those comics.